Hi, I'm Joanne from the Full Spectrum Centre Limited, an award-winning wellness and vocational training centre, and you're listening to the Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast. This show is all about physical, mental, emotional and spiritual wellness, and it's for people who are looking to improve their overall health and well-being. Each week, I'll share with you all the positive takeaways, tools, techniques and tips that I've gathered in both my personal and professional wellness journey that will help you to look, feel and be well. With a dose of motivation and meditation to keep you going, I'll be joined by a few friends who will be sharing their insights along the way too. Welcome to episode 12 of our Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast. I'm so happy, grateful and excited to be back here with you for our 12th episode. Now today, I am over the moon to introduce you to one of my mentors, Emma Hague. I came across Emma just randomly on the internet back in 2020. The world had gone into lockdown because of the pandemic, and I had had to close the doors to my businesses, and I had no idea how long that would last for. I'm going to be honest, I was feeling lost, scared, and I was looking for hope. Now, many years earlier, the universe had brought the teachings of the legend that is Bob Proctor, the personal development and self-improvement guru from the movie The Secret, to me, just when I needed them the most. And it didn't let me down this time either. It brought Emma to me, and she's enabled me to study Bob's teachings at a much deeper level through PGI's Thinking into Results programme. And I'm honoured that this Yorkshire lass who keeps it real has taken the time out of her busy schedule to share her wellness journey and experience to becoming a PGI consultant with us. Hi, Emma.
Hello.
Welcome to our Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
It's so good to have you here. I'm so excited. I want to start by asking you, what does the word wellness mean to you?
I think whenever I think of wellness, I always kind of come back to emotional wellness and mental wellness, psychological wellness, whatever you want to sort of call that wellness that's all holed up in your mind, I suppose. And I don't know if that's because of what I do. So a lot of what I do is around the mind and thoughts and how your thoughts affect your body and all that kind of thing. But I think, I've had so many experiences myself and seen other people experience physical illness and physical conditions that I after a lot of sort of research, I suppose, and speaking to people and seeing things happen, I do believe that an awful lot of them are, the physical health is a result of what's going on mentally and emotionally. And I think just always comes back to emotional health, emotional wellness to me. It's something that I believe very passionately in now, I think.
Yeah. And recent research into mind-body connection proves that direct result of what we're thinking can affect how the body works physically and physiologically. It's a fascinating area.
And I think the more I see about it, I was reading a study a few weeks ago about simple things like gratitude, speaking gratitude out loud, how it has an actual tangible effect on your cholesterol levels and on your heart rate and all those kind of things, and that's just from the thoughts that you're having. The fact that there's scientific proof now that it actually manifests itself physically. I think it's still an area it's getting more attention, but it's more. I find it a little bit frustrating that it's more in a kind of, rather than a preventative role, it's a kind of, there's this crisis, there's people with all these mental health issues and self-harm and all those kind of things, and we need to do something about it. And I think if it was just instilled at people at a young age,
Yeah.
that what you're thinking and, your emotions and, all that stuff that's going on in your mind is going to have an impact in some way, shape or form on all areas of your health.
Mm-hmm.
I think the place, I think we've been in a much better place, but we're still not there. It's still I think seen as being a bit woo or a bit whatever, bit out there, whatever you want to call it. Even though psychologists and psychiatrists and physiologists and whatever the correct term is for them all have been talking about it for a long time. I think there's a lot more interest in it, but I think from an official sort of advice point of view and things like that, there could be a lot more done to help people. And I know I've spoken to you before about things that have happened to me. I've been really fortunate with my own physical well-being, really, and the only times that I've had or I've suffered from any real physical illness or condition, I know I could always link it to some kind of trauma or some kind of emotional impact.
Yeah.
And I think that is true for a lot of people. I know there's a tiny percentage that can be put down to sort of genetics or DNA and what have you, but I think that the vast majority of wellness could be controlled a lot better with people taking care of their emotional health better.
Yeah, trauma is a big one, isn't it? It causes so many issues. I had a client once who had a problem with her shoulder, and she had been for MRI scans, X-rays, you name it. If you could scan it and test it, she had it done. And the doctor said there was absolutely nothing physically wrong with your shoulder. And it turns out, after doing a little bit of work, it was actually an argument she'd had with one of her parents when she was very young, teenage years, and she was holding on to it. And this pain would just happen at random times. And when we tracked it back, it was when she had those thoughts about that argument, maybe 20 odd years later. So the body holds on to that. And like I say, your thoughts have a direct response in the body.
Yeah, and I think, there's all this, people will say, oh, it's psychosomatic, or, it's like, it's just all psychological. And people will sort of say that flippantly. And a lot of it is, but it doesn't mean it's not real. It doesn't mean it's not physically there. It doesn't mean the pain's not there. It doesn't mean, and we know that they've tracked certain types of cancer and things back to trauma. It can trigger that gene that's supposed to be fighting cancer. It can trigger that, and we know that, and yet it's not really widely spoken about or used as a prevention, or and it's it can physically manifest itself in actual, either in pain and those the sort of the more neurological aspects of it, where it's to do with electronic signals and what have you in your brain, but it can also actually manifest itself in things forming in your body. It's it's a bit. You've got to try not to think too hard about it, because you could worry yourself to death, I suppose.
The mind is such a powerful tool, isn't it? Our bodies are a complex machine run by a supercomputer, and just looking at the placebo effects is that how powerful your mind is, that you can heal yourself just by thinking positively. And then the opposite of that is the nocebo effect, where you can actually manifest symptoms and side effects from medication just because you've read the side effects leaflet before you've even taken the tablet.
Absolutely. And I've seen so many and experienced so many, for example, deaths in my family where they've been told that they've got like 6 weeks to live, and they've died within a few days of 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever they've been given. And I think that, you're absolutely right. It can go, and there's so many stories and tales of people who've totally cured themselves by thinking of the things. And it does sound, when you say that, when you say you can cure yourself through thinking positively, it does sound a bit wacky. But when you actually look at how it happens and why it happens and the sort of science behind it, really, and all about frequencies and all the rest of it, you see, you understand that it's a thing. it's a real thing, and we really should harness it better, I think.
Absolutely. And that's borne out in the statistics. So when they look at, take cancer as an example, look at the statistics, there's a direct correlation between people that get a diagnosis like that is terminal, who then just sit and wait for that to happen, and those that think positively and go and do their bucket lists. And it's why now that when they give you your diagnosis, they don't give you a time span. And one of the reasons for that is because people will just take that as set in stone, and actually they don't really know.
No, exactly. And I think that's always been something to me. It's always made me a little bit annoyed, I suppose, when they used to. I mean, I've not been in a position recently where I don't really know what the sort of current state of that is, but I know, from past experience, it used to annoy me a bit that doctors would offer that, would offer that information, because it's just, they have no idea. All they can do is best guess from things that they've seen before, and that's not you. It's totally an opinion, and we do latch on to people in authority who are supposed to, who we think know better than we do, and we do put a lot of weight on that, and it absolutely can, especially with something, with an illness that's playing on your mind, and you're thinking about it over and over and over again. That what we know about repetition and the subconscious mind, and you're just programming yourself to disaster. It's a bit like the number of people who retire and then you hear that they've died a couple of years later when they've been totally active before, and it's, I think you can, it's just such a powerful tool. It's your imagination, isn't it? Really, I suppose it's all those faculties, but it's your imagination that kind of can run away with you if you don't take control of it.
So you touched on a little bit there about you've not really experienced physical issues, but you had more emotional issues. So can you just tell us a little bit more about your wellness journey and some of the challenges that you have faced?
Well, as I kind of alluded to before, I think the only real times I've had physical, not injury, physical issues medically, there's only really been one really big one, and that was when my appendix burst when I was, I can't remember if I was 18 or 19, but I think I must have been 18. And the whole run up to that whole year had just been really traumatic. I'd lost my grandfather, my granddad had died, and that was the first bereavement that I'd ever suffered. So I took that really hard. My mum and dad got divorced, just completely, or rather they separated completely out of the blue. When we'd always had a really sort of sheltered, relaxed upbringing, and so we had my mum had a bit of a what we would have called then a breakdown, I suppose. But she just completely had an event that lost her a job, and I'd come home and find her sitting in the dark in the living room, rocking in a corner. And when this is the build up, so it's started when I was sort of 16, 17, and when you're that age and you've got your own things going on, and GCSEs and all other sorts of things. I remember taking it, I think in hindsight, I took it hard, but at the time, I felt like I had to be really strong for my mum and my brother, because they were going through it as well. And it kind of manifested itself. But there were other things that happened. I found out that the boyfriend that I'd had for 2 years, my first love, had been seeing my best friend, and there's just a culmination of things that over a year to 18 months basically manifested in this appendicitis, and then it rupturing. I just obviously I didn't really think that at the time. But the other thing, interestingly, because I was thinking about this over the weekend, the other thing is my mum, and Joanne will know, I talk quite a lot about my mum as examples with things like this, because she's very worried about her health all the time. And my mum's appendix had burst and my brother's appendix had ruptured.
No way.
Yeah. My mum's had 2 years previously, my brother's had the year before. And when my brother's ruptured, the doctor said this is really unusual. It's not hereditary. Appendicitis isn't a hereditary thing. It's really unusual for two people in the same family for this to happen to. So, but of course, my mum was, oh, you want to be careful. It's happened to us over and over again. The slightest time I had any tummy ache or anything, we better take to the doctor. And I think, another part of it for me is probably that I was kind of almost expecting it to happen. Because and so then it was like three people in the same family. We were in like the medical journal and all.
I was going to say, what are the odds on that?
Yeah, they said they were. But again, the surgeons said most things like that are not hereditary. So worrying about them. But I do think it's quite possible that because my mum was worried about it happening to my brother, she's kind of, I think it has been passed along in a way because we've all been worried about it. But anyway,
that was the group manifestation, wouldn't it? Because she's been worried about it happening to her and your brother, and then she's passed that worry on to you. So that's two people focusing, and we know that where our thoughts go, energy flows. And wow,
we actually, I know one of my mum's best friends. Actually, her mum died from breast cancer, and her grandma died from breast cancer. And so she was so worried that she was going to die from breast cancer, she asked for double mastectomy, and they gave her a voluntary double mastectomy so that she didn't get breast cancer, and she actually got bowel cancer. And they said, it's not hereditary, that's something else. And I used to say to mum at the time that she's been so worried about that happening, because she still, even after the mastectomy, she carried on saying, it could be in there somewhere, you just don't know. And it's really difficult. It's really difficult, obviously, if you're in that position and you are worried that it's going to happen to you. It's not easy to train yourself to think of something different.
Yeah.
I think as we know, it's a lengthy and it can be a difficult process, but you can do it. That's the thing. It's just that we're not really taught to. We're kind of just left to our own devices. So that really was the only, for me personally, that's the sort of biggest physical thing that's ever really happened to me, and that's 30 years ago. It's a long time ago. And then since, any sort of physical ailments really have been, I know that they've been brought about by worry or stress or, particularly probably 6 or 7 years ago when I was, really had really bad financial problems and relationship problems and all kinds of things. And that would manifest itself more in, palpitations and not being able to sleep and those kind of symptoms. But anytime, I do get the odd cold and things. We were talking about COVID in the summer and things, and I can usually, I know you would say that a virus is a virus and it's spread, they just spread. It's not to do with what you're thinking, but I think your immune system is very much controlled by what you're thinking, or at least it can be affected by what you're thinking. And I can usually track something that's happened or a way I was feeling or something that was worrying me or something like that. Whenever I get any of those kind of things, I just see it in other people all the time, all the time.
So this is one of your passions, isn't it? This the mind and the body connection and reprogramming your mind. It's not just about positive thinking, and sometimes that leads to toxic positivity. So how did you first become interested in personal development and that side of things?
I just kind of fell into it really because I've had my own business for quite a long time, and so I used to have an accountancy practice. When I first left employment, I had set up an accountancy practice, and I had that for about 10 years or so. And then I started adding in business coaching, and it wasn't really, it wasn't what I wanted it to be at all. The businesses that I had were struggling. We were just living hand to mouth. I was working around my kids and working around Carl's shifts and what have you. So it kind of suited, but we were really struggling money wise. And I wasn't into personal development. I wasn't into, the mind. I wasn't into any of that kind of thinking yourself rich and all that kind of thing. I just thought it was a load of utter rubbish. And so I started doing business coaching because I enjoyed working with people, helping people work on their businesses. I had developed, I've learned some techniques and developed some systems to help people, women in particular, so to focus on helping women, but to help them build the structures within their business that they needed, so packaging and pricing and branding and all that kind of thing. And I was getting clients and taking them through these systems, and they were loving it, and they were ending up with this business at the end that was all branded the way they liked and priced in a way that was going to help them be successful and all this kind of thing. And I was just noticing that they had all this and loved it, and then weren't actually going out and doing anything with it. They didn't have the confidence, didn't have the sort of self-image, didn't have the mindset to go out and find clients and to deliver this message that they'd created and what have you. And I realised that was what was wrong with my business. That was why I couldn't get my business to go any further, because I was kind of keeping myself small. I was this, I just had this feeling that I needed to do more. I needed to go out and maybe do teaching or workshops or something like that. I just didn't have the confidence to do that. So I sort of knew something needed to change internally, but I wasn't really sure what. And my approach at that time was more, it was psychology. I was thinking, right, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with the way I'm thinking. There's something that I'm not doing. So I was just on the verge of thinking about what do I need to do. And then I came across Bob Proctor on a Facebook video. He just popped into my feed one day.
Just randomly.
It just happened. I just happened to go in. And that was it. He was explaining the science behind the law of attraction. He was explaining frequencies and how the conscious mind and the subconscious mind are connected, and how those thoughts then make you feel a certain way, and it's those emotions that then lead to what you do or don't do, and that's ultimately what leads to results. And there was just something about the way he explained it. I think it was because he was on a sort of scientific trajectory during that video. I think it was the more psychological element that caught my attention, and I just was hooked. I watched the rest of the video, and I just thought, this guy is on my wavelength. I can understand what he's saying, and this is what I need. So I went off and did what everybody else does and watched 1,000 YouTube videos of him, and I knew that I needed to work with him, or at least do his programs. But I was just I was in so much debt, and I'd done so many programs, and I just could not see. I knew it was going to be quite a lot of money to do a proper, to have a proper program. But I just knew I needed to do it, and so I ended up one day. I just booked a call with one of the people at PGI, at Proctor Gallagher Institute, and had a chat with him. And I decided I wanted to do Thinking into Results, which is the sort of mentorship program that I deliver now.
Yeah.
And I got into it, just kind of hustled my way to the money that I needed to get into it, and started the program. So it was a 6-month program. I got about 4 weeks in, and just knew that this was what my business coaching clients needed, and it was what I needed. So I then, after 4 weeks, decided to become a consultant and learn how to teach it myself. And that was fun.
What was that journey like, and what was it like working with the legend that he is? It
was a bit surreal, I think, to be honest, for me, because that first, Unfortunately, because I'm in the UK and they're in the States, or Bob was in Canada, the travelling was a bit of an issue. And so I became a consultant in beginning of 2018. And so from that point until the beginning of lockdown, we were travelling, and Bob was teaching us on webinars, and we were having daily videos from him, and we would have weekly calls, and it was just it was like stepping into another life, to be perfectly honest, because I'd had this really struggling accounts practice, and suddenly, even though my business didn't change straight away, I was surrounded by people who were positive, who understood all this material, who loved the material, by these mentors who are, just so positive and so such experts in the material that there's just an answer for everything. There's just, and we know, you've been through things to results, so you know that the answers to pretty much everything are in that program. You come across a problem and you go, right, what lesson's this? And then you go to the lesson and work your way through it, and it's almost like a little roadmap to live by. And I think when you're surrounded by people who are all doing that, and you're doing it yourself, it's just like being transported into another reality. It really was. And so in 2019 I went to Toronto to be certified, because we have to go through a certain process and certain tests and different criteria you got to meet. And one of the criteria at that time was you had to go to the live certification. If you wanted to be certified, you had to go. So we went to Toronto, and I mean, that in itself was, when I signed up to become a consultant, I knew I was going to have to do that. And I had no idea how I was going to leave my kids. I had 2 young girls at that time. Never left them for more than a night. Even then, I think I'd only done that about 3 times with my mum. To have to leave them for sort of what turned into 10 days, actually.
Yeah.
The thought of doing that and leaving them at home while they're at school and everything, at the time when I agreed to do it, I just put that to the back of my mind. I just thought, if I think about that, I won't do it.
Yeah.
So I just sort of forgot about that, and it happened. We worked it out. I took Carl with me. We went to Toronto. We went a couple of days early and met up with one of my first clients, Christine, who lives in New York State. She came to Niagara Falls to meet us, and we spent some time with her. And then we went to the conference for 5 days, and I got my certification, and we did lots of sightseeing in Toronto, and just things that we would not have done. We just would never have done that if I hadn't made this decision to go and do this. And then on the way back, we went to New York, stopped in Manhattan for the day, and had breakfast and lunch in New York. And
wow,
we just made a real event of it, and went on the upper deck on the jumbo and all. I'm really glad we did now, because they've gone, haven't they, jumbo?
Yeah.
And that kind of kick-started the next probably 18 months, which were just amazing. I mean, bearing in mind, this was the end of 2019. And so beginning of 2020, we went into lockdown. The world started to hear about the coronavirus. So it was just before then. And the next 18 months were the best 18 months I've had in my business.
Wow. And
I know that was fueled by that trip and spending those 5 days with those people and being immersed with Bob. I know it was. Yeah. And then, of course, we couldn't do it. We've not been able to do it since, because Canada closed the borders pretty much. And then this year, Bob passed away in February, and it just had, again, that had a massive impact on my business. And I know that's to do with my emotions, that's to do with my thoughts, and what's going on in my head. And I've had to sort of do my own little paradigm shift in the last few months because everything just kind of turned on its head. Not just for me, for all of us, and I think for not just for consultants, I think for a lot of people that followed Bob, it was just such a shock that it was like its own little paradigm shift in itself. It just sort of turned everything upside down. What you thought was possible. I mean, Bob was planning his 100th birthday at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. He booked a room to do a talk for his 100th birthday. And so that we just kind of thought this was going to happen, So you just sort of think
that was the shock, wasn't it? Because he was still working well into his 80s, we just thought he would always be there.
Yeah. I mean, when I went in 2019 to Toronto to get certified, Bob would have been 85, I think. I think he was 85 when I went. And he was just... He was like a 60-year-old. He was commanding the stage. He never needed any prompts. He never needed anybody to tell him where to go or what to do. And when you think about 85-year-olds, my own granddad, both of them died at 85, and they were, there's a world of difference between the way they were and the way Bob was. And he was, he was the walking, talking example of what he taught.
Yeah. Oh, he lived it, didn't he? Every minute of every day.
Yeah. And he, you could, that manifested itself in how he was, in his health and in his, I know in the end, obviously, we've all got to go sometime, but he was, while he was here, he was just so vibrant and so apparently healthy and energetic, and it was just a real inspiration, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah, he's sorely missed, but he lives on in his work, doesn't he? And you are in the unique position that you get to guide and mentor people through that work.
Yeah, and I think I've taken a bit of comfort from that, I think, this year. I think we all have, because I remember when this all happened in February, and there was a lot of outpouring of grief in the consultant groups and what have you, and I woke up the morning after it happened, or the morning after we'd found out, and just felt like he was saying, this is exactly what I've prepared you for. This is exactly why I wanted a consultant division. This is exactly why I wanted to be able to teach people, to teach the way I do, so that when I'm not here anymore, you're still able to, it still carries on. And I could almost hear him saying, what the hell, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is where you start now. The last 4 years have just been training, So
yeah.
And I think we've got to think of it like that.
Absolutely. So I know you're a little bit of a workaholic like me. You're always working, always thinking. How do you balance work and life, the work-life balance?
I don't really have one. I think, well, it's funny because I have this conversation with my kids quite a lot, because I know it sounds like a real cliche, but my work just is not work. And I know it does sound cliche, but because I love what I do so much, it's like a hobby. So, a hobby that I get paid for, thankfully. But I don't get stressed. And I know we were talking about this before, but I don't get stressed, really. I don't really worry about things. I don't get annoyed about things. And this is all to do with, I've had to train myself to go out, so I wasn't always like that. But I don't feel any, and of course I've got this this great ability, as you know, to not care what anybody else thinks, which helps immensely.
That holds so many people back, doesn't it? I know that's been part of my issue I've worked with you on, is the imposter syndrome, and they're just not feeling good enough and not worthy, so you end up just blocking yourself and self-sabotaging.
Yeah, and I think it goes even, I think it's so widespread, that fear of what people will think, it goes as far as, I used to worry. I used to worry that my family would think I was working too much, right? And so I used to curtail my work
Mm.
to what I thought they would want me to do, and I found it really. I found that stressful because I found that I was feeling resentful then because
Mm.
I couldn't do what I really wanted to do, and I think there's so much judgment out there on everybody about what people are so ready to tell you what they think you should and shouldn't be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and we do take it on. But once you have total ownership of what you're doing and you take responsibility for it and you take control of it and you don't worry about what anybody else is thinking, you make decisions about how you're going to be with people and what you're going to do for people, and you come at it from a place of integrity. I think it's such a relief when you don't worry about what the people think, and I think that's massive. I think as
Yeah.
far as self-care goes, I think that's the biggest thing you can learn, because it's one of the biggest things that causes stress, I
Mm-hmm.
think. So my balance, and especially I suppose the last few years, because of what's been happening, because of lockdown and all the other things, I've been quite it's been quite easy for me to, because all I've been able to do is work and live,
Yeah.
look after the family and work. We've not really, we haven't had other people to worry about so much because we've not been able to see anybody or do anything like that until I suppose this year really. But it's put me into a pattern. It
Mm.
put me into a pattern of, this is what I'm doing, and everybody else is going to have to work around me. Now, I don't mean that in a way that said, I'm not saying that I'm more important than anybody else or all that kind of thing. And I will obviously, at the drop of a hat, I'll go if somebody really needs me, I will go, and they come first, and
Mm.
your family comes first. But at the end of the day, I think we do tend to give too much priority to things that don't necessarily need it.
Yeah.
And that is driven quite often by what other people think, or a fear of what other people are going to think. Especially, I know I talk about it quite a lot when you've got about having kids and stuff, but people are very, very quick to tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing when you've got kids, or you've got older parents, or you've got, when you've got commitments. Everybody's got an opinion that they think that you should hear about how that relationship should work, or how you should look after those people, or and at the end of the day, it means nothing. You've got to decide what you want out of your life. You're the one who's going to be, I'm the one who's going to be laying on my deathbed at some point in the future and looking back and asking myself, am I happy with what I've done? And I don't want to be laid there resenting somebody else,
Yeah.
and feeling like, well, I would have done this if it wasn't for them, or those pesky kids, or anything. It's but it takes. We're not programmed to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
We're programmed to worry about what other people think. It's a deep-seated thing. So unless people actually make a concerted effort to change it, it's not going to happen. We're always going to be like that.
Yeah. One of Bob's teachings that stands out to me was when he used to say, talking about making your goals and goal setting, don't share your goal with anybody else unless they're really like-minded, because their natural reaction is going to be, oh, you can't do that, or what do you want to do that for? That's not going to work, because they're programmed to think that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to somebody yesterday actually who she was saying that she'd shared she's just started a business, and she'd shared these business ideas with some other people in her circle, in her industry, and they were, straight away, she said, I thought of you straight away, because immediately they were saying, well, how are you going to do that, and people won't pay that, and we've already tried that and that won't work. And she said, and I thought to myself, what was the need for me to tell other people? And usually the need is that you want them to justify. They want you to give you justification. You want them to agree with you usually, and if they don't agree with you, then you're going to start thinking about, well, hang on a minute, I thought this was a good idea. It's just human. It's just human nature, and nobody needs to know. Nobody needs to know what your plans are, unless it's going to affect them in some way, immediately. Unless it's imminently going to affect them. Nobody needs to know because it might not happen.
And we're all individuals. Just because one thing has happened to one person doesn't mean if somebody else does the same thing, they're going to get the same result.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's living through their own paradigm, aren't they? Everybody's living through their own experiences and their own beliefs and their own self-image, and nobody's got any right really to tell you what's right and what's wrong. It's like the whole doctor thing that we were talking about the prognosis, of how long somebody's got to live, and nobody's got a right to make that judgment because they don't know. Nobody knows.
No. So you don't get stressed. So we don't need to talk about how you de-stress because luckily you don't get stressed. But that's because of all the work that you've done and the thinking into results and being able to reprogram your mind to.
Yeah, and I mean, when I say that sounds obviously stressful things do happen, and I register them, and it's not that I don't it's not that I don't react to things still. It's just that I've got the tools and the knowledge and I've managed to train myself to catch those thoughts really early on. So I do still have those kind of thoughts, but I'm really quick at nipping them in the bud. And it's like we're talking about Bob passing away, and I still get emotionally affected by things, but not to the extent I used to, and not to the extent that most people do. I mean, some people, I know you can lose yourself. You can lose days in grief or in worry or being upset about something that's happened, and it's that I think is the thing that I think it's human. We shouldn't not have any emotions because that's a part of human nature. But I think being able to control them and being able to decide when you get emotionally involved with something, it's natural. If you lose somebody, or you get really bad news, or so it's natural to need to grieve a little bit, or to react in an emotional way. But it's the control over that I think that's important, because that's when people get into a downward spiral, when they don't have control, and that's when it gets debilitating. And sometimes life limiting, and
like you say, it's healthy to have that range of emotions and healthy to work through it, but it's the working through it and how long that process takes that's important, isn't it?
And I think the way you work through it is that my approach and Bob's approach was very much you focus on the future, and you focus on, right, that's happened, how are we going to make it better, sort of thing, rather than going over and over why it's happened and what could have done better and all that kind of thing. I just think that makes it so much worse and prolongs the agony of trying to get past it, to be honest.
No, that makes total sense. What does your daily self-care routine look like? What do you do to keep your mental health and your physical health and your emotional health?
It's mainly, really, the only routines I have are sort of based in personal development. So I have, gratitude. I do gratitude, and I do visualizing about how I want things to be, and I'm very focused on what I want to achieve, and how I want my life to go. And I do practice the things that Bob taught me and the things that I teach other people. And I think I don't really have self-care, a sort of physical, like some people will go for a weekly massage, or some people will go to the gym or whatever. I don't really have any of those things, and I did at one point, but I find that I just don't. I just don't want those things anymore, and I think that's partly because I do feel very. I feel very was going to say balanced, but that's not the right word. I kind of bimble along at the same, at the same kind of level. I don't really have huge peaks and troughs. I have a blip every now and then, but I don't even really have waves. But I think that in itself is self-care. I think that that control over your thoughts and keeping keeping a tab on your thoughts and on your emotions, I think that in itself is self-care. I think that's probably the deepest level of self-care you can do. But it's the most permanent level, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
So they're more the sort of routine that I have is more spiritual. I don't know if you call it spiritual, but I suppose it is really.
Also exercising your mind as well, because like we say, a lot of what you do and is personal development and mindset work, which then again, it's a direct correlation between the mind-body connection. You're getting your thoughts in order, so that will have an impact.
Yes, I think as well, as the years have gone on, I've had to become more. I think when you're running a business by yourself, you've got to have organised thoughts. I think, and I didn't. I've had a business for 17 years, and for most of that time, I haven't had organised thoughts. It has just been a bit chaotic, and I think that's where stress comes from. I think it's that overwhelm and not knowing what's coming next, and what's going to happen next, and how you're going to fit everything in, and all that kind of thing. I think the process you go through of being an entrepreneur, you kind of have to. Well, it's like we talk about, isn't it? You have to step in. You have to become the person that you want to be. You have to become the person who can have the life that you want to have, and it's that process. That's where the growth comes from. That's where the personal growth, personal development comes from. It's the internal shifts that you have to make to yourself to enable those things to happen. If you are chaotic and you are the kind of person who gets really, really stressed and panics and gets really worried on a day-to-day basis, you don't see successful people being like that. Mm-hmm. And it's not that they're just born like, a lot of them have worked. I've had to really work on it. It's a learnt thing a lot of the time. Some people are just naturally like that, but for most of us, we have to work on it, and I think that's why you see a connection. I think between entrepreneurship and personal development. I think there's a connection. There's an alignment there. With the people who want to be entrepreneurs, people who want to have their own business, people who want to really achieve something big. It's those kind of people who are interested in personal development and personal growth. And I think that's why,
Yeah. What are the most important lessons that you've learned in life so far?
Not to care what people think.
The big one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that is the biggest. I think that's the key to happiness, to be honest. I think
you found the answer to the universe.
Yeah.
Life and everything.
I mean, there's, it's like I keep saying, it doesn't mean when you say not caring what other people think, it doesn't mean not caring about other people.
Yeah.
It means not putting any weight on what they think about you, I suppose, is what I mean. Because I've had situations I've had to deal with in the last few years around family members and around other people that would have in the past really affected me emotionally, and I being able to detach yourself from somebody else's feelings and from somebody else's thoughts it's not just good, it's crucial, because otherwise you're living through somebody else's life as well, and at the end of the day, we can't control what anybody else thinks, control what anybody else thinks or feels. It doesn't matter what you say or what you do a lot of the time, it's still not going to affect what they think because they're programmed to think a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live your life trying to make other people happy or trying to be something that you're not, for the sake of other people, you're doing yourself a disservice, and it probably won't work because they're already programmed to be a certain way, and unless they change themselves. So, we've only got one life, and I just think if you're going to live it for other people, it's a waste. It's a waste of a life.
Absolutely. Would that be your advice to somebody who wants to live a healthier, happier, and more balanced life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd get essential oils. Because they think something else but joking aside, that is probably apart from the mind training, that is probably the only other thing that has made a really big difference in my life. And I have tried quite a lot of things, like I said, I used to sort of go for massages, and I used to go for those kind of treatments, but starting or finding out about essential oils and using them had a really big impact on that. When I was first getting started, because I first actually started getting into them about 2019 when I was first got into personal development and was into PGI and what have you. And a lot of the consultants when we were in training were using them. And I came home and started trying them. And for anybody that hasn't used them, I think look into them, research them, because the impact they can have on your emotions and how you feel, like immediately. I mean, the stuff that I do can take quite a long time. The training that we do is for permanent results, but you have to do it over quite an extended period of time. Things like essential oils are just they can work straight away. And I went off on a tangent there. The whole holistic, I know you know a lot more about that than me, Jo, but all of those sort of therapies and treatments and things, I'm sure I've never really tried any others, and I'm sure that there's others that are just as effective, but that's something else that's helped.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think a lot of people think of aromatherapy as just going for a massage with an aromatherapy oil, but actually using them at home. I mean, I've constantly got my diffuser on, using different blends. It, as you say, it impacts emotionally pretty much straight away. I can lift the mood in my office really quickly. Just use it. I know you've done the same. I've done the same. We've replaced our household cleaning products with essential oil based products that are chemical free, because that's the other thing. We're not just our thoughts affect our body, but the pollution and the toxins that are around us on a daily basis. I've noticed a difference in my health just from changing my shampoo to one that's essential oil based and completely natural.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, and I have to say, it's a little bit difficult for me to say, because I started using them about the same time. It's a little bit difficult for me to say how much of the change in myself has been down, because I did change. I made quite a big change quite quickly, like you say. I sort of got rid of all the. I made a big, as soon as I found out about what the chemicals could do to you, I kind of made a big deal about getting rid of them all, because I was thinking to myself, what's the point on working on the frequency from a sort of psychological point of view, if you want, from all this thought, if then the frequency in my body is going to be affected by the shampoo, the soap, the household cleaners, the toothpaste, that, what's the point if it's going to... so I kind of did a wholesale change. So it's, it's been a combination for me of both of them, but I do actually use them now with my clients because, as you know, because I just think it makes such a difference. It can make such a difference to how effective, things like meditating, or if you need to be focused, or if you need to be thinking clearly, or you just need to be relaxing, or de-stressing, or whatever. It makes in my experience, it's made such a massive impact.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a sort of a holistic approach that you need. I think you've got to go at it from a mind point of view and use all the other tools, the physical tools that you can.
Yeah.
And I think they're a really good way to do that.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and your insights and your advice and mentorship.
Thank you for having me.
Talking to you, and I'm lucky because I get to continue to work with you. But
you do. In about half an hour, in fact.
Yeah, in about half an hour. But we will share your details so that people can get in touch with you and follow you and hopefully get the experience I've had and work with you. So I'm so honoured to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, bless you. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you gained some understanding of just how powerful your mind is and what an important part it has to play in your journey to wellness. How our thoughts, feelings, beliefs and attitudes can positively or negatively affect our overall health and well-being. But don't just take Emma and I's word for it. Do your own research. Lots of studies show that there is a strong relationship between our mental and emotional states of mind and predominantly the immune system response. Their conclusion is that prolonged negative mental and emotional states, such as stress, depression, and anxiety, can worsen immunity functions and affect other bodily functions too. Whereas positive mental and emotional states of mind are associated with a reduction in symptoms experienced related to illness, including pain, and increase longevity, basically lengthening our life. Food for thought, isn't it? Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found the discussion and the tips covered really helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this episode, please do leave a rating and a review and share it with your friends and family. Pop along to our website at thefullspectrumcentrelimited.com and join our self-care and wellness newsletter club. You'll receive our free 55-page printable self-care guide and workbook. Well, that's all for this episode, but I really look forward to seeing you next week. Take care and bye for now.